You know, our first guest tonight from his work on Miami Vice, Nash Bridges, Watchmen, and Knives Out. He stars in the comedy series Kenan, which airs Tuesday nights at 8:30 right here at NBC. Please welcome to the show, Don Johnson. How are you, Don?
I'm terrific, Seth. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. You know, Kenan's an old friend of mine, and I've been a longtime fan of yours, so I was delighted to see you were working together. How did you end up in this project?
Well, they plucked me out of the unemployment line, and it was a good choice. No, I think it probably all started. Lauren and I have been friends for a long time, and about a year ago or so, I can't remember. COVID has made my brain mush. Lauren asked me to do a table read with Michael Cera, and I did, and then I never heard from him again. So I said, well, that must have been a bust. But then meanwhile, this came. He called me and he sent me this. He said, here, take a look at this, see what you think, blah, blah, blah. And here I am.
Now, we had Kenan on, who said it is both a delight to work with you, and it's also a delight to hear stories about your work in the 80s. It did strike me that maybe the Miami Vice set was a little wilder than the Kenan set.
I don't know. It's all a little bit hazy. I think, yeah. Well, you know, given that we pretty much owned the city of Miami, and we had a party sequence in every episode, and I was single, and it was kind of like. It was kind of like joyful.
I'm very happy you don't look back on it with any regrets. It just seems lovely.
I don't remember one bad moment, not one.
I can tell you, of course, the other thing you guys did is you developed a style, that maybe was accurate to Miami, but the rest of us didn't know anything about it. And this is a true story. I remember going off to a school dance, and I was probably, 11, 12 years old, and my dad said, you should roll up your sleeves of your blazer, Miami Vice style. And even as a kid, I thought, I think you're wrong, Dad.
he was wrong. There were a lot of fools that were trying to pull that off, and let's face it, it's a thing.
Yeah, I think it helps. It helps a lot to look like Don Johnson when you want to pull off that look. I say that as a compliment.
Thank you very much. I was joking. It's very flattering that something that I did that was out of practical reasons. I don't know if you're aware of this, but it's hotter than in Miami. And so I just started taking off clothes, the socks, the belt, that T-shirt was just the front. The unstructured jackets and the linen clothes, and even then, I said, "Hey, I'm still pretty damn hot." Okay, these sleeves are going up.
Well, it worked out. I guess sometimes, that's the mother of invention. I want to ask as well. You guys were doing a show, obviously on location. Did that give you a good deal more amount of freedom because you didn't have the sort of NBC execs around in the way they would if you were in LA or New York?
It was kind of being marooned a little bit because, we were up very early and everybody in California sleeps till, they don't even come in till 10 or 11. And so by the time they would come into the office, we already had a half a day's work shot, and they would be sending us pages and changes, and we'd go, no, you don't understand. That boat is already gone. So we'd make stuff up, and just say, oh, this is a good idea. Let's do this. And because we all came out of independent films and stuff. And I'm not sure that we even knew what a permit was. We just would say, oh, well, let's crash the car here in the middle of this intersection. Watch out. There's a couple people there. We should probably get rid of them. But yeah, we were just kind of wild men down there going, making a crazy show.
Well, it's so interesting you say that because I feel like people might forget now that it did feel so much more cinematic than what anybody was used to on television at the time. And so it made sense that you guys all came from film because it certainly showed up in the product.
Yeah, it did. You know, there was, and we were all like, it was like, we all knew each other, and it was all kind of like, you know, we knew that what we were bringing was better than what was there. And for us, it wasn't really, you know, we didn't think about it in terms of, oh gosh, we're starting something new. We just started something saying, well, if we're going to do this, we're going to do something that's got some qualities, a little more interesting. Music is better, and the colors. It'll actually have a film color palette. You know, where we won't use certain colors, like you never saw red in Miami Vice. And well, occasionally I saw red, but it was for different reasons.
So now, you know, that was a long-running show, and then you did Nash Bridges. Which I, of course, remember you did with Cheech Marin, and you guys had incredible chemistry. I had no idea, and maybe this was better known at the time, that Hunter S. Thompson was sort of behind the creation of the show with you.
Yeah, well, Hunter was my neighbor in Aspen, and gratefully I was just out of mortar range.
I was going to say, it does not sound like a great neighbor.
Well, actually, he was a fabulous neighbor. Whenever I was out of town, you wouldn't know this about Hunter, but he loved animals. And if I had a sick animal, he would, and I was out of town, he would come over and sleep in the stall with my animal, or in you know, wherever they were. And, you know, and he'd bring a few animals of his own for company. And, but no, he was a fabulous friend. We were very, very close friends for many, many years. And one time we were sitting around over at his house, and probably some illegal substances were around. I said, listen, I have this. He was complaining about how he didn't have any money. And I said, well, look, I got this commitment on CBS, you know, 22 episodes. I said, let's just come up with something. We did come up with something. It was terrible, but he was there. He was in the room, so he got to get a royalty, and I took the germ of the idea that Hunter and I did, and we turned it into Nash Bridges.
Well, that's fantastic. What a fascinating neighbor to have. I have more to ask you. We'll be right back with more from Don Johnson after this.